You're about to watch 5 of the most extraordinary conversations Joe Rogan has ever had. 5 guests, 5 completely different backgrounds. A physicist who worked on the craft, a US intelligence officer who testified under oath to Congress, a Navy Top Gun combat pilot, an aerospace engineer, and the chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy. All of them sat across from Joe Rogan. All of them said the same thing. We are not alone, and the evidence is right in front of us. This is the most credible UFO testimony ever recorded in their own words. 1. Bob Lazar appeared on JRE episode 1315. In 1989, a man named Bob Lazar appeared on Las Vegas television and made claims that seemed impossible. He said the United States government had 9 extraterrestrial craft. He described the propulsion system in detail. 35 years later, science confirmed that element exists. The FBI raided his business. The government claims he'd never worked there. His school's records disappeared. His employment records disappeared. Make of that what you will.
This time that I went in, there were hangar doors open. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on. I saw it sitting there, and we walked by it. It had a little American flag stuck on the side, and I thought, oh my God, this finally explains all the flying saucer stories. This is just an advanced fighter, and this is fucking hilarious.
Right.
So I went by, I slid my hand alongside it. I got reprimanded immediately for touching the thing. And there was a guy, an armed guard, that followed us in and just said, keep your eyes forward and your hands at your side and just walk in the door. So that was the first time I had seen anything that was weird. This was a small reactor about the size of a hemisphere, about the size of a basketball, on a metal plate. And when it was running, it produced a gravitational field of its own. Now, this is something that we can't do. We can't produce any gravity. The only way we get gravity is from large quantities of mass. But there's no machine we can have that turns on that makes gravity. Like, you can turn on an electromagnet and it makes a magnetic field. We can't make a gravitational field. Anyway, this device was producing that. And Barry said, almost like he was bragging, go ahead, try and touch the sphere. And I couldn't. It pushed my hands away, just like 2 like poles of a magnet. So that was...
so like when you take 2 magnets and you try to press them together and they push against each other?
Yeah, that kind of cushion feeling, but you can't get them together. The closer you put them, the more they push. But
and you felt that physically with
my
your hand?
Yeah, now there's nothing that does that. And that immediately caught my attention, going, wow, this is something else.
That's a physicist describing a working gravity reactor in 1989. Not theoretically. He says he saw it demonstrated. He says he used an element that science wouldn't confirm existed for another 20 years. That's either the most elaborate long-running hoax in history, or it's the truth.
There's this very heavy element fuel, element 115, something that wasn't on our periodic charts at the time.
But it is now.
It is now, yeah.
When did it become on the periodic table now, the way the charts now?
I don't remember. Do you remember when they...
2004, Darmstadt, Germany, I think, is where they first fabricated 4 atoms. It lasted 220 milliseconds with the atoms. It's nothing, right? And then it later was discovered a couple more times they could fabricate it. Then they gave it a place then on the periodic chart. After that, called it Moscovium.
So they told you about this stuff in 1982?
Yeah, well,
no,
we
kind of...
1982.
What year was this?
It was 88 and 89 when I was there.
Oh, okay.
82 is when
82 was when you were at Los
Alamos.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So 88, 89, they told you about this stuff. So this was not like...
No, they didn't tell me about it. That's one of the things that this group came up with.
So this one area, this element 115 was the fuel.
Yeah, it was the fuel.
Now, one of the things that's happened to you that has allowed people to discredit you was there's obviously been some sort of an effort to erase your past.
Yeah.
Some sort of an effort to erase your education history, your employment history at Los Alamos. In fact, the only way your employment history was proven at Los Alamos is someone got a directory of the employees from the past and read into it, and you were on that list. So it proved that you worked there, even though people were trying to deny it, and they were trying to use that as a way to discredit you, that you never did work at Los Alamos. You weren't really a scientist. What was that like to experience? I mean, of course, we're talking about the 1980s, the 1990s, when you could get away with something like that.
Yeah, obviously there were a lot less records on computers at that time. It was still file cabinets and folders. But that was frightening. That was one of the first things
What happened?
I think George Knapp was the first one that uncovered that. I mean, he saw my birth certificate disappear.
It disappeared.
Yeah,
there was no record of you being.
Yeah, there was no record of that. There was
his mom
no
tells
record.
His mom tells me about that. Like, it was frightening for her. He's got a real family. He's a real person. It's frightening for her.
But the Los Alamos thing really surprised me. And that they were so adamant that, no, this guy never worked here. Don't be ridiculous. And George went back and forth, for
I got the letters on the wall,
months. I mean, it was ridiculous. But fortunately, somebody came up with a 1982 phone book directory.
Bob Lazar has told the exact same story in the exact same way for over 35 years. No embellishments, no changes, no book deal for the first 20 years. If he's lying, he is the most consistent liar in human history. We move on to number 2. Number 2 features David Grusch. David Grusch spent 14 years as a decorated US Air Force intelligence officer. He handled the presidential daily brief. He held the highest clearances in the US government, and then he went to Congress under oath and said this.
What does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he, give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access. And then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP. And I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? I was already talking to these amazing high-level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material, and, he knew it was non-human.
That is the former Senate Majority Leader of the United States in his own living room confirming he knew we had UFO material and was denied access for decades. This is not a conspiracy theorist. This is the most powerful legislator in America.
This answers a fundamental question for humanity. Are we alone, or what happens when we die? Well, I don't know about that, but are we alone? Well, the answer is we're not alone. And I know that with 100% certainty, which as an intel officer, you never say 100%.
Think about what you just said. As an intelligence officer, someone who's trained their entire career to qualify every statement with uncertainty, he said 100%. That word is doing enormous work there.
There were multiple very senior people that were concerned about talking about that kind of stuff with me. That is certainly, as nuts as it sounds, that was a real subject of conversation. Even it sounds like something out of like Star Trek First Contact.
But it doesn't if you have vehicles.
So it's like once you realize the phenomenon's real, then you realize we've recovered artifacts and, biologics or, dead pilots, if you will, even though it's, kind of creepy to even think about that in your worldview. You don't think they were ever, alive sometimes too, right? And I'll leave it at that.
Biological remains, not wreckage, not material, biological remains from recovered non-human craft, said calmly, under oath by a man who risked his entire career to say it. Number 3, Commander David Fravor, episode 1361. Commander David Fravor flew 24 years for the US Navy. He went to Top Gun. He led a squadron of Black Aces. And on November 14th, 2004, 60 miles off the coast of San Diego, he encountered something he still can't explain.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why you say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes, it's not sensors, right? So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? Helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. You know, if you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that. It's really easy to see from the air. So we're like, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet, and we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small in your eyes.
Not overly small. I mean, an airplane down that low, it's 40 feet. You can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna go check it out. That's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm gonna stay up here. And I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views. And the other airplane will kind of have a God's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. We get to about the 12 o'clock position. I'm just in a nice, easy descent. And a reason, because I've been asked, could you go more aggressive? You can, but when you're out over water, the water looks the same at 20,000 feet as it does at 2,000 feet. You don't, so you can easily put yourself in a non-recoverable position if you're not paying attention and you go into the water. So I got this nice, easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about, 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The tic-tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns, so now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface. We're up high, we're coming down, it starts coming up.
Notice what's happening here. This is not an object moving randomly. It saw him descending, and it came up to meet him. An object with no wings, no rotors, no exhaust, responding to his movements like it knew exactly what he was doing.
I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around a circle. I'm descending, it's coming up, and I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock, and it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle, nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it, and I just kind of drop my nose aggressively, and I cut across the circle, and it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be, because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I can get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose, and it starts to accelerate. And within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof and it's gone. So I call the other airplane and I said, hey, do you guys see that thing? And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So we don't see it. We're looking. At the same time, I say, hey, let's turn around and let's go back to see what was in the water. Was there something there? So we turn around, we're right there. We haven't gone anywhere. It's gone. Water's perfectly, there's no white water, nothing. It's just blue.
Within half a mile, a Navy Top Gun pilot, and it just vanished. Not fast, not into the distance, just gone. And then he turned back to where the disturbance in the water had been. That was gone too.
So as we're in we call it the PR shop, we're taking off our flight gear. One of my crews is getting ready to go out, and I think they were going to be on a tanker mission, but they had a targeting pod on board. So they launch off, and we're telling them about this before, and the backseater, Chad, says he's really determined he's going to find this thing. So he tells the pilot, hey, we're going to find this thing. So they're just out driving around, and in the back seat of a Super Hornet, there's no stick, but there's side stick controllers, and they're to control the sensors, because that's what the weapon systems guys do. And they can change displays really fast by just hitting a button, and it'll flip from the radar to the targeting pod. And the way the system actually works is when you see something on the radar and you designate it as your primary target, all the other sensors will look at that point. So everything is kind of synced together. So he picks up a hit on his radar, and he goes to lock it up, because I watched all the tapes. He goes to lock it up, and immediately the radar can tell, it gets signals back that it's being jammed. So, and technically jamming is an act of war. It starts jamming the radar, goes into a jam extrapolate, a bunch of stuff happens on the scope. Well, he's smart enough to castle to his targeting pod and he takes a passive track, and that's the video that you see of the Tic Tac where it's just sitting in the middle of the screen real quiet.
Active jamming, not stealth, not radar absorption. It was actively, intelligently jamming military radar. The same radar system that defends US aircraft carriers, and then it disappeared, reappearing 60 miles away in under a minute. Number 4, Ryan Graves. Appeared on JRE episode 1883. Ryan Graves is an aerospace engineer and former US Navy F-18 pilot. In 2014, his squadron upgraded their radar system. What they started seeing after that upgrade every single day for years changed the way he understood the world.
So they're not on a flat plane and they're not going in a straight line.
So I don't want to draw too many firm statements like that, because we would see them being flat too. We'd see them perfectly stationary up there, regardless of the wind.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. So what kind of wind are you talking about?
Oh gosh, I mean, at altitude you can have anywhere up to 100, 120 knots of airspeed.
What is that in miles per hour?
It's about 100, 130, 140 miles an hour.
So they're completely stationary with 140 mile an hour wind.
Correct.
How would something do that?
It's confusing to me as well. Even if we had something that could just burn that much energy, right? Like if you had a sphere surrounded by little rockets, right? Just imagining something right now.
Okay.
And if you wanted to keep that perfectly stationary, right, against gravity, you could just fire all the rockets at the bottom really fast and hopefully keep it flat, right?
Right.
It's going to have tiny little variations. And then if you have wind hitting it and all this, you could potentially have those rockets try to counter it, but it would never be perfectly still in winds like that.
Because the wind's not perfectly still either, right?
Exactly.
It changes and varies.
It does. So it's almost like it's the wind. It's not even really fighting the wind, it seems. You know, it just seems like it's just there in a way.
Wow.
Think about what he just described. Not moving slowly against wind, completely stationary. An engineer telling you that no known propulsion system could achieve that, not even theoretically.
They took off as a flight of 2. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means there's a problem of some nature, and he was just sitting there saying, hey, I was hit one of those damn things. And we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. He described it just as a black or dark gray cube, and that cube was inside of a clear or translucent sphere. And essentially, the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
And that description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs is I don't know, does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
It does come with a lot of assumptions baked in.
It baked in. So that's something, but whatever it is, that is a design that people have reported seeing before. That this translucent sphere and this cube, can you see through the cube?
Not to my understanding, no.
So it's some sort of solid black cube that's inside this translucent sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just floating around and flying around the sky.
This near miss happened at the entry point to their training area, a predetermined GPS coordinate. The object was sitting right there, and when the lead pilot described what he saw at close range, it matched descriptions from other pilots, other bases, other years.
And how long would these things stay up there for?
So from our experience, and again, we weren't studying these, but they were always out there. They were
Always.
out there when we took off, we'd see them, and then we go to land, they would still be out there.
Like every day?
Every day.
Every day.
every day.
So you guys go from not having any idea that these things are out there to an upgraded radar system to seeing them every day.
Yep.
Every day for years. Not one encounter, not a week of anomalies. Daily contact with something their radar could track, but their eyes couldn't always see, and their physics couldn't explain. And not one person came to tell them what it was. Number 5, Avi Loeb, appeared on the JRE podcast number 2401. Avi Loeb is the chair of Harvard's Department of Astronomy. He has published more scientific papers than almost anyone alive. He is not a conspiracy theorist. He does not believe things without evidence, and he thinks the question of alien intelligence is the most important scientific question humanity has ever ignored.
So there are two existential risks in our future. One is artificial intelligence, AI. The second one is alien intelligence, also AI. And the question is, which one would arrive first?
Let's go back to, I don't want one more time.
Oumuamua.
Okay, I don't want to screw it up. How large was that?
That was the size of a football field.
So
of over 100 meters.
Small in comparison to 3i Atlas.
Oh yeah, that's my point, that 3i Atlas is 1,000,000 times more massive, at least 1,000,000 times more massive than Oumuamua.
Think about that framing. Not aliens versus humans, but two forms of artificial intelligence racing towards us simultaneously. One we built, one we didn't, and we have no idea which arrives first.
And we also know that there are 100 billion stars like the Sun in the Milky Way galaxy alone. Most of them formed billions of years before the Sun. And there are billions of Earth-Sun analogs. Now, we all believe that we came out of a soup of chemicals. You know, that's the scientific narrative of how human intelligence came on this Earth. And so it's quite likely that, you know, we are not the first one. Sorry to break the news, Elon Musk was probably not the most accomplished space entrepreneur since the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago. And therefore, we should consider the possibility that things like us existed long before us. And you can ask the question, how long does it take our own technology, the Voyager spacecraft that we launched out of the solar system, how long does it take it to move to the opposite side of the Milky Way galaxy? You know, thousands of light years away. Takes less than 1 billion years. And that means that all these civilizations that had their history initiated billions of years before ours could have done it. And all we need to do as responsible scientists is to check if among all the rocks that come from outside of our backyard are really rocks, or maybe one of these objects might be a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor.
This is not speculation. This is the Harvard astronomy chair doing the maths. Billions of Earth-like planets, most of them billions of years older than ours. The only question is whether we're looking.
But if you don't have the right software now with AI,
Right.
if you don't have high-quality scientists the way that the Manhattan Project employed, you might not figure out things. There is a reason why the Manhattan Project recruited the very best scientists. So I say, put $1 billion on this, or more, bring in the best scientists in the world to figure it out. I am funded at the level of millions of dollars through the Galileo project. The government can do a bit. What is $1 billion? It's a drop in the bucket for the Pentagon. But if, you know, you should think about the potential risk from drones that are used by adversarial nations, and you want to have the very best sensors using the very best
Of course.
AI
I just can't
algorithm.
believe that that's not already being done. That's
Again,
what's so confusing.
well-
I would have thought that there was some sort of very sophisticated monitoring of the skies already.
Well, that's
Especially when you take in all these anecdotal stories, all these different stories of people spotting some sort of a ship, something
Right.
that moves in a very strange way.
Right.
I would think that they're monitoring this stuff all the time, and not just with radar.
You see, there is an approach which is to wait for the government to figure out things or to release, declassify them. So a lot of people want the government to
Right.
declassify. I think it's just like waiting for Godot.
Huh.
You can wait forever,
Right.
and it will never happen.
He's not waiting for a whistleblower. He's not waiting for a congressional hearing. He's already launched the Galileo project, a network of observatories scanning the sky right now for objects that don't behave like anything we built. 5 Joe Rogan episodes, 5 people with nothing to gain from lying and everything to lose. If any of this made you think, I'd strongly recommend going and watching the full episodes. I've linked every single one in the description below. Joe Rogan asks the questions most interviewers won't go near, and these 5 conversations are some of the most important he's ever put out. If you want more compilations like this, subscribe. We cover the best moments from the greatest long-form conversations on the internet. Drop a comment also and tell me which of these 5 you found most credible.